Full Circle is brought to you by Goods Candy Shop. We aren't just better, we're Goods.
Welcome to Full Circle. I'm Suzanne McAllister. I'm glad you could be with us today. In our music segment, we have an individual who has performed at the Colts games and at the Indianapolis 500. She sang the national anthem, and she is here to perform the national anthem in our music segment. So be sure and stay with us. But first, we're going to get an interesting and educational overview of the Indiana War Memorials. It covers 24 acres in downtown Indianapolis, and you are sure to find out about things that I'm sure you never realized about those memorials. Here to give us all the overview, we have Brigadier General J. Stuart Goodwin. He is the commander of the Indiana Air National Guard, and he's also the executive director of the Indiana War Memorials Commission. It is an honor to have you here.
Thank you.
And thank you also for your service to our country.
Thank you.
Why did you decide to go into the military?
Well, it was a time in the late 60s when I was in college and the draft was going on, so I knew that there was that to contend with, plus the fact that every male in my family had always gone to the military, so it was just a foregone conclusion. And so I was in ROTC at the University of Evansville, and the day I graduated from U of V, I went into the Air Force and have been in ever since.
And a stellar service, and again, thank you so much for protecting our country. Let's talk about the number of people that do make that as a commitment to serve our country.
It's really kind of interesting from the standpoint that if you would count every American that's living today, only 1 out of 10 has served in the armed forces. The numbers are even more astounding when you think about those that are wearing the uniform today. Less than 1% of our entire population is in active service today.
I think that will be a surprise to many people because we always think of the military services as being so involved, but just 1%.
Less than 1% are active today. And when you get down to Indiana, the numbers also are just really amazing. And it's one of the things when I took this job about 6 years ago, why would Hoosiers do what they did and to spend all this money and these resources to honor their veterans? And the fact is that if you go back to the Civil War, there was 3 out of 4 eligible aged Hoosiers who could have served, did serve. There were 20 states who fought for the Union, as Indiana did. And so you'd figure out about 5% per state. In actuality, Hoosiers provided 10% of the Union Army. And if you look at every conflict that we've had since the Civil War, Hoosiers have served in disproportional terms and items. And so what we have now is the fact that we're the 16th largest state in the nation population-wise today, but we're the 4th largest National Guard, not the 16th largest, but the 4th.
So that really says a lot about the Hoosiers. And it also is probably why we have devoted so much land and space and resources to the Indiana War Memorials. Why don't you give us an overview about the memorials? And I know that a lot of the construction went on after World War I and quite a financial commitment as well.
There was. As a matter of fact, the fact is that when we were talking about the War Memorial, it was built after World War I, which was the war to end all wars. The war started in 1914, was over in 1918, but the United States was really only involved in about the last 15 months of the war. During that time, there were 135,000 Hoosiers who served in the war, with about 3,000 that died. A little over 1,400 died in combat. The rest of them died from disease. And so what happened was when the war was over, Armistice Day, 11th month, 11th hour, 11th day in 1918, it was decided shortly after that that this was the war to end all wars. We would never have another war, which is just a, you know, it's almost an incomprehensible thought.
It was wishful thinking, certainly at that time.
Yes, ma'am, absolutely. And so what happened in the 1920 session of the Indiana legislature, they had a special session and they allocated $2.2 million to honor these 135,000 that served. And $2.2 million, you know, in today's world, we talk about billions and trillions and millions, and it's very difficult to put that into perspective, but just to give you a small idea about that, what happened during that time for $2.2 million, this was a time when a gallon of milk that today costs about $2.75, a gallon of milk during that time cost a nickel. 5 cents. So if you can turn those numbers around, and it's quite a bit of money.
Absolutely. And as we look at some of the footage of that memorial being built, you know, I always think of it as the big memorial that's downtown that has all the steps. You've been surprised that many people have never even been inside there.
We feel that we're the best kept secret in the state of Indiana, and obviously we don't want to be, which is why we're so grateful to have an opportunity like this today to talk to people. We actually take care of 24 acres of property downtown. And when you count Crown Hill and you talk about Military Park and you talk about the other areas in Marion County that have things that space and acreage to honor veterans, there's no city in the country that has more acreage honoring veterans than Indianapolis, Indiana. And we're second only to Washington, D.C. in the number of monuments that we have to honor our veterans.
Well, I think it's admirable what we as a state have done, certainly the Hoosiers who have served to help protect us. Don't go away. When we come back, we have lots more footage to show you, and we'll give you an inside look at all of the various memorials around downtown. Welcome back to Full Circle. We're continuing our conversation with Brigadier General J. Stuart Goodwin. He is the Executive Director of the Indiana War Memorials, and we left off by talking about what I consider the crown jewel of the 24 acres, and that is the Indiana War Memorial. Well, you're the expert, you're the Executive Director. Give us some more facts and figures on that.
Well, it's amazing that people don't think they can come in there. We hear that all the time from folks. It was really the initial building that was built, and the preponderance of the $2.2 million went into building that building. The history of it, though, is just amazing, because what happened was that when it was decided that they would build such a building, they went out for bids, and there were 27 companies that put in a bid, and the firm that received the bid was from Cleveland, Ohio. The building is 210 feet tall, it's 420 feet square, and obviously it's made out of Indiana limestone. But the design of it is what I think is really kind of interesting, because it was designed after one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, a place called Halicarnassus. And it was the tomb of King Mausolus, who was the king of Asia Minor in 366 BC. He served for 26 years, and his wife, the queen Artemisia, she wanted a magnanimous tomb for the king, and so she had this Halicarnassus built. Our building is modeled after that building.
That is fantastic. Now, you mentioned people can come inside. What do they see when they come inside?
Well, that's where we have several things that go on in there. One of the things that when they walk in, immediately what they're going to see is different colors of stone. And one of the best kept secrets about our place is the fact that when World War I was fought, there were 6 Allied countries, the United States and 5 European countries. And we know of no other place in the country where this has happened after a conflict. But these 5 European countries actually brought stone and craftsmen into our building to build the building as a sense of community. They lived together, they fought together, they died together, so they wanted to build something together. And so the Pershing Auditorium, which seats 500 people, and then up on the top of the building at the shrine room is the shrine to these 6 Allied countries. And we get people all the time that say, well, I went inside, but I didn't go up the stairs to see the shrine room. And it is magnificent. It looks like something you would see, in one of the best museums in the world, which we think we're in that category.
It is a must stop, and we'll put a website up on the screen, so if you want more information about the location and the hours, Definitely stop. And I understand you're doing weddings, you're doing funerals, you have more than 400 events every single year. We could talk for the rest of the show on the Indiana War Memorial, but let's go to the center of the Indianapolis downtown, and that's the Soldiers and Sailors Monument. You oversee that as well.
Yes, ma'am.
You're full of facts. Give us some more facts.
Well, one of the probably the least known facts is the fact that it sits in the geographic center of the city of Indianapolis and the state of Indiana. And it is an icon, and it's something that is used in a lot of advertising. And I tell people all the time, I wish I had a penny for every time the picture is on the television or in the newspaper. But it is 284.5 feet tall. It's made out of Indiana limestone from Steinsville.
That's good.
And the Terre Haute Stone Company actually built it. They started in 1887 to talk about it. 1889 is when they started construction. It was completed in 1901 and dedicated in 1902. And so what it does is the east side of the structure talks about going to war and fighting the war. The west side of the structure is victory. The astragals, which are the two bronze pieces that are in the middle, one is for the soldiers and one is for the sailors, and then up on top is victory. And her name is simply Victory. It's not Miss Indiana or whatever everything other people call it. But she is 38 feet tall total with the stand on her. She weighs 19,300 pounds.
Wow.
And there's two really neat stories that I just want to tell you about real quickly. One of the stories is that she's facing south, and what she is holding up is a torch. And so one of the stories is that she's looking over the vanquished battlefields of the Confederacy and walking the Confederates back into the Union. That's story number one. Story number two is she has her hand up saying to the Confederates, don't do that again. Don't leave the Union again. And so you can pick whichever one of those that you want to talk about.
That's great. Well, Brigadier General is full of stories, and we have more to tell you after this. We're continuing to find out some insiders' information about the Indiana War Memorials from the Executive Director, Brigadier General J. Stuart Goodwin. You know, the one thing I want to ask you, because sometimes people say that we glorify war, and by having all these memorials, we really are just sort of buying into that whole war machine. How do you respond when someone says that to you?
It's a very common misperception about what those of us that wear the uniform are all about. I can tell you that to a person, none of us want to go to war. What we do is we train hard every day to prepare if we do have to go to war. But I would look at it from the other standpoint, and this is what we try to do at the War Memorial, is that we try to educate people, and especially the young people, about what sacrifices Hoosier veterans have made throughout the years so that we can live the way we live today. People think that this all happened just because of it happened. You know, we have freedoms. We can, I'm talking to you in English today. I mean, we can worship wherever we want to worship. We don't have to worry about some police state coming here and censoring what we're talking about today.
Right.
The reason that happens is because of what veterans have done throughout the years. And what we do is that we have chronicled and documented the service of Hoosier veterans so that people can come and learn what it's all about. Remember the 90-10 rule. 90% of the people who live in this great country have never had any firsthand experience to do this. The 10%, we need to educate the 90% about what the 10% have done so that we can have freedom.
Very well said. I'm really glad I asked you that question. And certainly when we think of those who have given their lives, when we think of the USS Indianapolis that's along the canal, that was just an incredible story of survival, of death, of sacrifice. Tell me about the USS Indianapolis.
Well, the USS Indianapolis CA-35, the World War II heavy cruiser that carried the atomic weapon components for Hiroshima and Nagasaki, once they delivered the weapons, then they were heading out, and that's when Japanese submarine I-58 struck them shortly after midnight on the 30th of July. I've had the honor, and it's truly an honor, to speak with many of the survivors. 4.5 days in the water, extremely cold at night, extremely hot in the daytime. Most of them were not in rescue boats. And the word hero is used pretty lightly today's terms. These were true heroes. This was the single worst naval disaster in the history of our country. And we are so honored to have the monument down on the canal to make sure people understand what that was all about. A lot of people are not aware of the fact that Indianapolis has actually had 3 naval vessels named after it. There was a cargo ship in the early 1900s. There was the CA-35 in World War II, and then there was SSN-697, an LA-class nuclear submarine that was commissioned in 1980 and decommissioned in 1998.
Wow. So when you give your bus tours and the school tours, do you find that many of these children are just flabbergasted, and I guess is the only word I can come up with, as to the sacrifice that these men and women have given?
Well, and they are. And what we try to do is that we try to make it interesting. We try to bring history alive for them, and so that they can relate to it. Because what we want to do is that we want them to start thinking about history, and so that they'll be interested in it. We recently, and I know we're short on time here, but we recently just changed the names of our rooms that were named after Patton and MacArthur, great Americans. But last year we put out a thing to all of our students across and to name it after Hoosiers, and now Admiral Spruance and General Shoup, who was the Commandant of the Marine Corps, and from up by West Lafayette, Indiana. And so it's important for them to know what Hoosiers have done. Well,
you have done a tremendous job in educating us on what Hoosiers have done. I'd like to thank Brigadier General J. Stuart Goodwin, who is the Executive Director of the Indiana War Memorials and the Commander of the Indiana National Guard, Air National Guard. Thank you so much for being here. And do stop by and go on the website to get more information. We'll be back with our national anthem after this.
Stay tuned. Musical Showcase is coming up next. And now, here's our Musical Showcase.
Welcome back to Full Circle. If you are a first-time viewer, I hope you continue to watch. We end every program with music, and I love this segment because we have such a variety. And today we have Major Lisa Kubczynski. She is a 23-year veteran of the Indiana National Guard, and she's going to sing the national anthem for us. First of all, thank you for your service.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me today.
Well, it's a pleasure. And you are also the Public Affairs Director at Camp Atterbury. Tell me what your job entails.
Well, I like to think that I have one of the best jobs in the Army because I get to tell our story. And our story is a story that needs to be told, and we get to tell it through the eyes of a soldier, through the eyes of a service member, and the many men and women who are training down at Camp Atterbury. So my job is to tell that story through photos and video and stories. So I feel very fortunate for that.
And you have that real life experience of the life of a soldier. You were deployed to Iraq in 2008. What do you remember most about that experience, Major?
You know, I remember most is that it was a great opportunity to go to another country and just be a part of something bigger than myself. I mean, the military is one reason why I joined, and to be able to go to on a deployment like that as part of one of the largest, or the largest since World War II, Indiana National Guard deployments, and to be a part of that historical moment was a great honor for me, and I was led by some great leaders, and I went with a whole host of military members that I was proud to serve with.
Absolutely, and being able to serve with other fellow Americans who are here to defend our country has got to be just a tremendous honor. What advice would you have for parents whose daughter perhaps is thinking about joining the military? It's not an easy decision.
It is not an easy decision, but I will tell you that, like myself, there are great mentors in the military. There are men and women throughout the ranks who are there to help shepherd young men and women in their decision and to provide, just some good guidance. I started out as an enlisted soldier, and after 12 years decided to become a military officer in the Indiana National Guard. And that was done just through encouragement, great mentorship of the different leaders. So I say there are many opportunities in the military, no matter what service. And I just say for all the men and women out there to take advantage of that, both through just great experiences, life learning experiences, educational experiences, and just multiple opportunities. So.
Absolutely. Well, before you sing the national anthem, this is a Ralph Lauren. It means absolutely nothing. You are a decorated veteran. You are a major. Tell me about one of the most important ribbons that you have.
Well, one of the most important ribbons that I have, or just all of them, just are a display of the 23 years that you mentioned.
Sure.
But, the top one here is typically, it goes in order of precedence, and it's a Bronze Star Service Medal for my deployment to Iraq. And equal to that is a Meritorious Service Ribbon. And this ribbon right here is the Iraqi Campaign Medal. So I was proud to serve there, proud to be a military member. And I also want to point out right here, this is my 3 years deployment for being an enlisted. So, you know, both 12 years.
They all mean a lot, don't they?
They all mean a lot. They sure do. So I thank you for pointing those out.
Well, I thank you for being here, for your service again. I'd like to thank you for joining us. I'll see you next time, Full Circle. And I'd like to turn it over to Major Lisa Kopczynski for our national anthem.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we've hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we've watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
From Iraq and Afghanistan, our brave warriors are coming home, wounded. Some with wounds you can see, some with wounds you can't see. Wounded Warrior Project was created to support our men and women coming off the battlefield. Please help carry these warriors the rest of the way home. Get involved at woundedwarriorproject.org.